Hi there. Welcome to Sleep Stories Universe. You made it to the end of the day. Get comfortable, however your body wants to rest right now. Some nights, these journeys take us far into the distance. Last time, we stayed down in the dark water and met the living things that make their home there, the ones that glow, the ones that drift, the ones that have never once needed the sun. Tonight, we stay in the deep once again, but this time, we're looking for something quieter, not what lives there, and not how far down it reaches, but the edges of what we actually know. You don't need to remember anything tonight. You don't need to follow every detail. Just let the words carry you. Tonight's story is about the deep ocean and what we still don't fully understand. Of all the places on our planet, this may be the one we've seen the least. We've mapped its surface from far above, brushed lightly against its seafloor, and lowered our lights and cameras into it, only for a few hours at a time. Even now, most of it remains unseen, waiting, patient, in the dark. So tonight isn't about having the answers. It's about settling gently beside the things we haven't figured out yet. Because here's something worth resting into. Not knowing isn't a problem to solve before you sleep. Down here, the unknown isn't frightening. It's simply quiet, open, and still being discovered, a little at a time. We'll move slowly through the places where science has learned a great deal, and the places where it honestly, softly says, we're not sure yet. And if you drift off somewhere along the way, that's perfectly fine. Let's begin. Somewhere far below the surface lies more water than we have ever explored, and more of it hidden than we have ever mapped. We know it's there. We know only a little of what it holds. And tonight, we won't rush to fill in the blanks. We'll simply float above them slowly and let them be. How much of it have we really explored? That's the question we settle into first tonight. And the honest answer begins right at the top, up at the surface, where the light still lives. If you've ever stood at the edge of the sea, you've already met the part of the ocean we know best. The surface. The place where sunlight lands and scatters across the water, where waves gather the morning and hold it for a breath before letting it go. Standing there, it feels like the whole ocean is laid out in front of you, open, visible, something you could take in with a single long look. But the surface is really just a lid, and almost everything the ocean is happens quietly beneath it. Here's the simple version. The ocean covers more than 7/10 of our planet's surface, and more than 90% of it, measured by volume, is deep ocean, the cold, dark space that begins a couple of 100 meters down and then keeps going, far past the reach of any light. So when we picture the sea, we tend to picture that thin, bright top layer, the swimming part, the sunlit skin of it, and we quietly forget that the true body of the ocean, the overwhelming majority of it, is something almost none of us will ever lay eyes on. Let that settle for a moment, without needing to do anything with it. There's no rush at all. Most of the living space on our entire planet is down there, in the dark, and we have seen almost none of it. I want to be careful with that word seen, because it turns out to be where much of the confusion begins. People ask, quite reasonably, how much of the ocean we've explored. It sounds like it should have a clean, single answer. A tidy percentage you could print on a poster. And the honest reply, is that it depends almost entirely on what you mean by the question. One way to think about it is as layers of knowing. Different depths of knowing, you might say, to match the different depths of water. At the loosest, most forgiving level, we've mapped the whole thing, all of it. Every stretch of the seafloor has been sketched into rough form, mostly from measurements gathered by satellites looking down from far above the water. That sounds impressive, and in a way it is, but a map like that is a blurry one. It gives you the broad strokes, the swells and the sags of the bottom, without any of the fine detail. Whole undersea mountains, features as large as cities, can slip through the cracks of a map drawn that coarsely. You would never know they were there. Let's slow that down for a second, because the next layer is where it gets humbling. There's a closer kind of knowing, mapping the seafloor properly, in real detail, using sound instead of light, gathered from ships moving slowly across the surface far overhead. That's the kind of map that actually shows you something you could trust. And as of recent years, only somewhere around 1/4 to 1/3 of the world's seafloor has been mapped at that high resolution. Picture that, roughly 1/4 to 1/3, which means the greater part of the floor of the world's ocean has never once been measured in true detail. It's worth saying that number keeps changing. Ships are out there right now, tracing fresh lines across the dark, and the figure creeps upward a little every year. But even so, most of the bottom remains a blur. And then there's the closest kind of knowing. Not mapping from a satellite, not measuring with sound from a ship, but actually going there, lowering human eyes or cameras down into that space to look at the seafloor directly. At this level, the number becomes almost impossibly small. Explorers have laid eyes on less than 1,000th of 1% of the deep sea floor. Say that slowly. Less than 1,000th of 1%. It's okay if that figure won't quite fit in your head. Most very large or very small numbers slide right off the mind, and this one is no different. You don't have to hold on to it. What matters most is the quiet feeling underneath it. We live on a planet whose single largest region is, to us, still very nearly unseen. We've only grazed its edges. We've barely stepped inside. Here's the part people often miss. When you hear someone say we've explored 80% of the ocean, or that we've only explored 5%, what's usually happening is that they're reaching for one clean answer to a question that simply doesn't have one. Mapped at the roughest level, nearly all of it. Mapped in real detail, a modest slice. Actually visited, actually witnessed with our own instruments. Barely a whisper. And all three of those are true at the very same time. They don't contradict each other. They're just answers to three different questions wearing the same clothes. It's easy, hearing those figures, to feel them as a kind of failure. As if, by now, we really ought to have finished the job. But that isn't quite the shape of it. It's more that the deep ocean is genuinely, almost stubbornly difficult to reach, and we'll spend real, unhurried time later tonight with why that is. For now, it's enough to notice the overall shape of the situation. More than 8/10 of the ocean remains unexplored, in the fuller meaning of that word, unseen, unvisited, still waiting in the quiet, not hidden from us on purpose, just far and deep and dark and larger than the tools we've had to meet it with. Now, gently, let's zoom out, because there's a detail here that surprises people. Almost everything we do understand about the ocean, we've learned from the shallow end. Nearly all of our ocean knowledge, the animals in our books, the currents in our forecasts, the places that have earned names on our charts, comes from the upper waters, the parts nearest the surface and the coast. The deep, which is very nearly the whole of it, has offered up only fragments. We've been studying the sea for a very long time, and for most of that time, we've been studying its first few floors, while the rest of the building descends level after level into the dark beneath our feet. If your mind drifts a little here, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing to keep hold of. Let the numbers move through and out again, like water passing by. Because there's a softer truth folded inside all of this, and it's the one I'd most like you to rest on tonight. We will probably never finish exploring the ocean, not because we'll lose interest or give up, but because it is so wide and so deep and so endlessly, restlessly changing that finished was never really on the table to begin with. There will always be another stretch of dark water no one has yet crossed. Always another patch of seafloor that no light has ever touched. And it isn't a heavy thought, not really. There's something in it that loosens the shoulders. We so rarely let ourselves sit beside something unfinished without the itch to fix it or tidy it away. The deep ocean asks for the opposite. It asks us to let it stay open, to let it remain unknown, at least for now, and to find that restful rather than unsettling. There's a strange comfort in it, if you let there be. All that dark water isn't empty, and it isn't waiting on us. It simply is vast and patient, going about its business. The tides still turn over places no one has named. Currents still move, slow and certain, through rooms of the ocean that have never held a single beam of light. It has been doing this for a very long time. It will keep doing it long after tonight. You don't have to picture all of it, maybe just a little. The way the water goes from bright to blue, to a deeper blue, to something past color altogether, and how most of what the ocean holds lives down there, in that last, quiet, unlit part, the part we've barely met. We've spent this first little while up at the surface, looking down, getting a feel for how much water lies below us, and how little of it we've truly reached. And from here, the only way to understand any of it is to begin filling in that blurry map, to move from the rough shape of the seafloor toward its real contours and edges, to trade one question for a quieter one, not just how much is down there, but what the bottom of the world actually looks like. And that begins, of all things, with sound sinking down through the darkness, reaching for the floor and listening for the shape of what it finds. The mapping of the ocean floor. So what does the bottom of the ocean actually look like? That's where we settle in next. And the strange thing is, for most of the seafloor, the honest answer is still, we're not quite sure. You might expect that a place we've been sailing over for centuries would be well known by now. We've crossed these waters countless times. We've laid cables along the bottom, drawn shipping lanes across the top, carried whole economies back and forth over that hidden floor. And yet the ground beneath all that traffic is, in most places, still only faintly sketched, known in outline, the way you might know the shape of a room you've only ever walked through in the dark. Part of the reason is simple, and it's easy to forget. Down in the deep, there is no light to see by. None at all. So the ordinary way of learning what a place looks like, shining something on it, letting your eyes take it in, doesn't work past a certain depth. You could lower the brightest lamp ever built, and it would light a small room around itself, and beyond that little circle, the dark would simply swallow it whole. The ocean is far too wide and far too deep to be lit. Light was never going to be the tool that showed us the floor. So we learned to map it another way. We map it with sound. The basic idea is simple. A ship at the surface sends a pulse of sound downward, and then it waits, and it listens. The sound travels down through the water, touches the seafloor, and echoes back up. By timing that echo, how long it takes to leave and return, you can work out how far away the bottom is. Do that again and again, sweeping the sound across the floor as the ship moves slowly along, and little by little a shape begins to rise out of the darkness. A ridge here, a wide valley there, the long slope of something large, climbing up out of the deep. One way to think about it is like feeling your way across a pitch-black room, using your own voice instead of your hands calling out, and reading the walls by how the echo comes back to you. It's patient work, slow work, but it's the clearest way we have to picture a place that has no light of its own and never has. And when it's done with care, what comes back can be quietly astonishing, because the seafloor is nothing like the flat, featureless plain people once imagined it to be. Charting it in detail has revealed mountains standing alone in the deep, long ridges winding across the bottom like seams in the earth, canyons and trenches folding away into the dark entire landscapes no one knew were there, or that older, rougher charts had drawn wrong. Features the size of mountains, simply missed, not through any carelessness. The tools we had before just couldn't feel that finely. That's the part worth sitting with for a moment. There are mountains down there we've only just met. Peaks that have stood in the darkness for ages, that no eye ever saw, that we're only now learning the shape of. Let's come at it from a different angle, because there's a larger effort underway, and it helps to know its shape. Around the world, ships and research teams have been working together toward a single goal, one complete, detailed map of the entire ocean floor. It's a long project, spread across many years and many nations, each expedition adding its own patch to the whole. And as of recent years, they have charted a little more than a quarter of the seabed in real detail. A little more than a quarter. That's genuine progress, and at the very same time, a quiet reminder of how much floor is still out there, unmeasured, waiting its turn in the dark. It's fair to ask why it takes so long. We've mapped the surfaces of far-off worlds in fine detail. Why is the bottom of our own ocean still mostly a blur? The honest answer is that it's slow, it's costly, and there is a staggering amount of it. Sound only covers so much water at a time. A ship maps a strip of seafloor as it travels one long ribbon laid down behind it, and the ocean is unimaginably wide. To chart all of it finely, you'd have to cross and recross the entire sea, ribbon beside ribbon, for years on end. It's less like taking a single photograph and more like mowing a field the size of a planet, one narrow pass at a time. So even after decades of steady effort, the greater share of the floor remains known only in that rough, blurry way. Not unknown exactly, just not yet seen clearly. Here's where it's worth pausing, because there's a limit tucked inside all this that's easy to miss, and it quietly shapes everything still to come. Even a beautiful, finely detailed map of the seafloor can only tell you so much. It can show you the shape of the bottom, the rise of a ridge, the cut of a canyon, the broad sweep of a plain, but it cannot tell you what's living there. A map like that has no creatures in it. It doesn't show the animals moving across that ridge, or drifting in the water above it, or how any of them make their living down in the cold and the dark. The shape of a place and the life of a place are two entirely different kinds of knowing. And sound, for all the wonders it reveals, mostly gives us the first one, so we can come to know something like the architecture of the deep, its floors and walls and hidden rooms, while barely knowing its inhabitants at all. We can trace the rooms without ever once meeting who lives inside them. Hold on to that quietly, because it's part of why so much of the deep stays a mystery, even as our maps grow sharper. There's one more thing about the deep that shapes all of this. It's a quiet detail, easy to overlook, but it changes how you picture the whole endeavor. Down there, the tools we lean on at the surface simply don't reach. The signals we use every day to find our way, the invisible ones that guide a phone, or a car, or a plane through the sky, don't travel through seawater. They fade almost the instant they enter it, so you can't just steer a machine down to the bottom the way you'd guide something across the open air, watching its position the whole time. Beneath the surface, so much comes back to sound to measure the depths, sound to carry a message, sound to find the way through the dark. Up here, the world belongs to light. Down there, it belongs to sound. It's a different world in that way. Not a hostile one exactly, just one that runs on rules unlike the ones we're used to. A place where you listen far more than you look, where the map is drawn by ear, not by eye. If any of this is slipping past you, that's perfectly fine. None of these details are yours to carry into sleep. Maybe just keep one image and let the rest go soft, a single ship, alone on a wide, dark sea, sending a soft pulse of sound down into the deep and waiting, patiently, for the shape of the world below to answer back. That's how the map of the deep gets drawn, slowly, patiently, one echo at a time, across a floor so vast that even now we've traced only a corner of it. Let's let that settle, and then we'll go on. Because there's a gentleness in this picture if you let it in. All those hidden ridges and quiet valleys don't need us to have seen them. They're simply there, holding their shapes in the dark, whether or not a ship has ever passed above with its listening sound. Some of them we've charted, most of them we haven't. And the ones we haven't aren't lost. They're just waiting exactly where they've always been, unbothered by whether we've gotten to them yet. There's a kind of patience in the deep that's worth borrowing here at the end of your day. The seafloor is in no hurry to be known. It has kept its shape for a very long time, and it will keep it a while longer, map or no map. It asks nothing of us. It simply rests down there in the cold and the quiet, vast and unhurried, one ridge at a time, waiting to be found or waiting just as contentedly, never to be found at all. And even where we have drawn the map, even where we know the shape of the bottom, a further problem waits for us. Knowing what a place looks like is not the same as being able to go there. Between the map and the seafloor itself lies a stretch of water that resists us at every meter down, colder, heavier, darker, with each step we take toward the bottom. And that struggle, the sheer difficulty of reaching the deep at all, is the next thing worth understanding. Because the limits aren't only about how much we've managed to map, they're about how little of it we can ever actually visit. The limits of observation. So if we can map the seafloor with sound, why can't we simply go and see it? That's the question that opens the next stretch of our night. And it turns out the gap between knowing the shape of the deep and actually visiting it is wider than almost anyone expects. Let's take it one step at a time. Imagine you could sink slowly from the surface toward the bottom. Not falling, just easing down, the way a feather settles through still air. In the first stretch, the light is still with you. The water is warm near the top, lit and blue, familiar. But as you go, three things begin to change together, quietly and steadily, and each one makes the deep harder to reach than the last. The first is the light. It leaves you. Not all at once, but by degrees, the blue draining out of the water until there's no blue left at all, just a darkness so complete that it doesn't lift no matter how long you wait. Down there, in most of the deep ocean, there has never been a sunrise. Your eyes, which have served you your whole life, simply stop being useful. There is nothing for them to catch. The second is the cold. The higher water holds the sun's warmth, but that warmth doesn't reach far. Sink past the sunlit layer, and the temperature falls toward the freezing point and stays there. The deep ocean is, almost everywhere, a cold place, steady, unbroken cold, the kind that seeps into everything and never lets go. And the third is the pressure. This is the one that's hardest to picture, and the one that matters most. Every meter of water above you has weight, and as you descend, all of that water stacks up over your head, pressing in from every side. Near the surface it's gentle, but keep going, and it builds and builds until, in the deepest places, it becomes a force so immense that it would crush almost anything we might carelessly send down into it. Not a dramatic crush, a quiet, total one. The kind that simply doesn't allow for mistakes. Put those three together, no light, deep, cold, crushing pressure, and you begin to understand why the deep ocean resists us so thoroughly. It isn't unfriendly exactly. It's just built on terms that have nothing to do with us. Here's a way to hold how difficult that really is. It's often said that, in some ways, it's easier to send a person into space than to the bottom of the ocean. Sit with that for a moment. The vacuum of space, cold and airless and impossibly far and reaching the floor of our own sea, is, in some ways, the harder trip. Space, at least, is empty. It doesn't press back. The deep ocean pushes against every inch of anything that enters it, harder the further down it goes. That still leaves the question hanging, doesn't it? If it's that hard, how do we go at all? We go carefully, and we go briefly, and we go at great cost. To reach the deep, people travel inside submersibles, small, sealed craft, built strong enough to hold back that pressure and keep a pocket of ordinary air inside. They work, but they can only stay down for a few hours at a time, and they are enormously expensive to build and to run. Every dive is a short visit, planned and rationed, to a place that a person could otherwise never survive for even a moment. You don't wander the deep. You drop in, you look for a little while, and you rise back toward the light. And because each visit is so short and so costly and so hard to arrange, only a very small share of the ocean has ever actually been looked at directly. We touched on this earlier, the tiny sliver of the seafloor that human eyes or cameras have truly seen. This is why. It isn't a lack of curiosity. It's that every hour spent watching the deep is bought at a steep price in a place that fights the whole way down. This next part is worth taking slowly because the difficulty runs even deeper than pressure and cold. The sea itself works against the machines we send into it. Salt water is patient and corrosive. It wears at equipment, works into seams, ages everything faster than air ever would. And the signals that carry our voices and fix our place on a map simply die in deep water, so a craft down there can't call home the easy way or be steered from above. So much falls back on sound and on patience and on careful planning made long before anyone gets wet. One way to picture the whole predicament is this. Imagine trying to study an enormous, dense forest, but you're never allowed to walk into it. You can only hover far above now and then, and lower a single instrument on a long line for half an hour before you have to haul it back up. You'd learn something, certainly, but how much of the forest would you really come to know? Which of its animals would you ever meet? How much would happen below the leaves that you'd simply never see? That's close to our situation with the deep ocean. We hover at the surface. We lower our instruments on their long lines, and the forest goes on with its life, mostly unseen, far below the reach of our brief and borrowed glimpses. There's one more piece to this, and it's a quiet, practical one, but it shapes everything. Reaching the deep takes money, a great deal of it, and compared with the resources we pour into exploring the sky above us, the effort to explore the ocean below has always run on far less. It's a striking imbalance when you think about it. The largest, nearest, least understood region of our own planet, explored on a modest budget, a few costly dives at a time. Not because it doesn't matter, just because the deep is difficult, and difficulty, in the end, is expensive. And if the thread of any of this has loosened, just let it go. None of it needs following into sleep. Let the words blur at the edges and keep only the quiet underneath them. Because underneath all the practical reasons, the pressure, the cold, the dark, the cost, there's something almost tender in the situation, if you let yourself feel it that way. The deep ocean is not withholding itself from us out of any unkindness. It simply exists on a scale and under conditions that our soft and air-breathing bodies were never made for. We are creatures of the surface, of light and warmth and easy breath. And the deep is the opposite of all of that. Meeting it at all, reaching down into that cold, dark, pressing world, even for an hour, is a small marvel every single time it happens. And here's what we can say with some confidence, and it's worth resting on. Every direct look we've ever taken at the deep sea has been partial. A glimpse, a short visit to one small patch, lit by one small lamp, before the return to the surface. We have never simply watched the deep the way we watch a meadow or a mountainside continuously, easily, at our leisure. We've only ever caught pieces of it, which means that nearly everything we believe about the deep ocean has been assembled from fragments. A creature glimpsed once and never again. A single sample brought up from a single spot. A few minutes of footage from a place the size of a country. We've built our whole picture of the largest living space on our planet out of brief encounters, gathered at great effort, separated by vast stretches of water we've never touched. It's worth holding that gently as we go on, because it changes how you hear everything that follows. When we say we've discovered the creatures of the deep, or come to understand how they live, what we really mean is that we've caught fleeting sight of a few of them, in a few places, for a few short moments. The confidence has limits, and those limits aren't a flaw in the science. They're simply the honest shape of trying to know a world we can barely enter. So we hold two things at once, and we hold them lightly. On one side, real knowledge hard won, careful, gathered dive by dive from a place that resists us at every meter. On the other, an ocean of open questions, still waiting past the edge of the lamplight. And now, having felt how hard it is even to reach the deep, we can turn toward what we've actually found down there, starting with the living things themselves. Not how many we've counted, but how many, most likely, are still out there in the dark, entirely unknown to us, still unnamed, still waiting to be met. The unknown species. So how many living things are down there that we've never even met? That's the question we drift toward now. And it's one of those rare questions where the honest answer is not a number, but a shrug, a wide, wondering shrug that scientists themselves give when you ask. Let's build it up slowly. Start with what we have found. Over the long history of studying the sea, people have discovered, described, and given names to a great many ocean creatures somewhere on the order of 200,000 species catalogued and recorded. 200,000. Fish and corals, crabs and octopuses, drifting jellies and worms and countless smaller things. It's a vast library of life, gathered patiently over generations, written down, named, known. And here's the part that gives you pause. That library, as large as it is almost certainly the smaller share of what's really out there. Because when scientists try to estimate how many ocean species there truly are named and unnamed together, the numbers scatter wildly. Some careful estimates land in the hundreds of thousands. Others reach past 1 million. Others higher still. And that spread isn't sloppiness, it's honesty. The estimates disagree so much precisely because we've seen so little of the deep that we genuinely don't know where the true number lies. The range is the answer. The wide, uncertain gap between the guesses is itself the most truthful thing we can say. It helps to know how those guesses are even made. With so little of the deep seen directly, scientists work outward from the small pieces they do have, counting the species in a patch they've studied closely, then asking what that might mean stretched across the whole vast floor. It's careful arithmetic, but it's arithmetic built on a sliver. Change your assumptions even slightly about that unseen remainder, and the final number swings by hundreds of thousands. That's why the estimates fan out so far. They aren't careless. They're simply honest about how much is still being guessed. Stay with that for a moment, because it's a strange and lovely kind of not knowing. We can't even say, within a comfortable margin, how many kinds of living things share our own planet's ocean with us. not to the nearest 100,000, perhaps not to the nearest million. Here's what we can say with some confidence though. A great many scientists believe that most deep-sea species have simply not been discovered yet, most of them, which means that for every creature we've found and named down there may be one or two or several more still moving through the dark, entirely unknown to us, never caught, never photographed, never given a name in any book. And that raises a fair question. If they're unknown, how could anyone even begin to guess how many there are? Part of the answer comes from watching how fast new ones keep turning up. Every year, scientists formally describe roughly 2,000 new marine species. 2,000 year after year, with no real sign of slowing. And these aren't only tiny hidden things. Some are sizable, some are strange and striking. They keep arriving because the ocean keeps offering them up each expedition, each careful look, turning over another handful of creatures no one had ever recorded before. And it isn't only the deep, remote places that surprise us. Now and then, a creature turns up that is large, or vivid, or utterly unlike anything on record, found not because we finally reached some impossible trench, but because someone looked a little more carefully at a place we thought we already knew. Each one is a small correction to our confidence. Each says, gently, there is more here than you counted. And if the ocean can still hand us something sizable and strange after all these centuries of looking, it's fair to wonder what the smaller, shyer, deeper things are still keeping to themselves. One way to feel the scale of it is to look at a single patch of deep sea floor that scientists have studied closely. In one such region of the Pacific, a stretch of the deep bottom examined in real detail, researchers catalogued thousands of animals, and the striking thing was how many of them were new. The large majority had never been formally named at all. Not a few strays, most of them. An entire community of living things going about its life on the ocean floor, almost all of it unknown to science until someone finally went and looked. Let that land gently. In just one studied patch of the deep, most of the life turned out to be new to us. Now widen that out in your mind, across all the deep sea floor we've never examined closely, the overwhelming majority of it, and you begin to feel the true shape of our ignorance. It's not a small gap around the edges of our knowledge. It's most of the picture. There's a part of this that rarely gets said, though the reason all this life stays hidden isn't only about depth. It's also that finding and naming a new species is slow, painstaking work, and there are real limits on how much of it can be done. It takes ships and equipment to reach the deep, which is costly. It takes specialist people trained to tell one species from another, to recognize when something has truly never been described before, and there are only so many of them. So even the creatures we do manage to bring up or capture on camera can wait a long while before anyone can say for certain what they are. The bottleneck isn't only the ocean's depth, it's also the sheer, patient human effort that each new name requires. And there's a quiet backlog in all of this that few people picture. In the collections of the world in jars and drawers and cold storage, there are creatures already gathered from the deep that still have no name. Brought up, preserved, set carefully on a shelf, and then simply waiting, sometimes for years, sometimes for decades, until a specialist with the right eye finds the time to study them and say what they are. Some new species are discovered twice, in a sense once when they're lifted from the water, and again much later, when someone finally realizes that no one had ever described them. Even our finding outruns our naming, and there's a quieter, smaller layer beneath even that. The tiniest life of all the microbes, the drifting specks, the vast unseen multitudes in every mouthful of seawater may represent enormous numbers of kinds we've barely begun to sort out. A single small measure of seawater can hold staggering numbers of these tiny living things, and a great many of them have never been identified. So even our estimate of most species are undiscovered may itself be leaning on the large side of unknown. The smallest life may hide the biggest gaps, and it goes deeper still down beneath the seafloor itself. Life doesn't stop at the surface of the mud, it reaches on down into the sediment and the rock below. A vast hidden world of tiny organisms living slow, sparse lives in the dark of the Earth's own crust. We've only begun to sample it. There are gentler ways of listening now, too, ways of reading the faint traces a creature leaves behind in the water it moved through, so that a single scoop of the sea can quietly reveal the presence of animals no camera ever caught. Every new method opens the same door onto the same truth. There is far more life here than we have ever met. And if these numbers have already begun to blur, let them. None of them are yours to keep. Let them wash out with the tide and stay right where you are. Because there's a tender thread running underneath all of this, and it's worth pausing on before we go further. Somewhere in that dark water tonight, there are creatures alive right now that no human being has ever seen. Not one. They're feeding, drifting, glowing softly perhaps, living out their whole lives in a part of the world we've never entered. They were there last night and the night before, and for a very long time before that, complete and real and utterly unknown to us. They don't need us to have found them in order to be alive. They simply are, out there in the quiet, going about the business of living, name or no name. There's something almost restful in that thought, if you let it be. We so often assume the world has already been fully counted, that everything real has been found and filed and photographed by now. And the deep ocean gently corrects us. It's still full of the undiscovered, still holding lives we've never laid eyes on. The map of life, like the map of the seafloor, has whole regions left blank, not because nothing is there, but because we haven't yet arrived. Let yourself picture it for just a moment, softly. The dark water going down, and scattered all through it, drifting, settling, glowing, swimming countless living things with no name and no witness, not waiting to be found, not lonely for our attention, simply there, each one whole, each one at home in a world that was never built for us to see. There's no sadness in that, not really, only a kind of vastness, patient and full, going quietly about its life while the surface sleeps. And here's what we can't say, at least not yet. We can't tell you what most of those creatures look like, or how they live, or even how many of them there are, because our estimates rest on stretching out what little we've seen, guessing at the whole from a few small samples. The true count of ocean life remains genuinely, honestly unknown. Not unknowable forever, perhaps, but unknown tonight, and likely for a long time yet. There's even a quiet sadness folded in, which the science acknowledges plainly. Some of these creatures may slip away before we ever meet them, vanishing from a changing ocean, unnamed and unrecorded, known to no one. It's a gentle kind of loss, the losing of something you never knew you had, worth a moment's tenderness, and then we can let it rest. So we hold the two halves together, lightly. On one side, a real and growing library of ocean life, 200,000 creatures found, named, understood. On the other, a far larger darkness of the undiscovered. Its true size a genuine mystery, still offering up thousands of new lives a year with no end in sight. It's a beautiful imbalance when you stop resisting it. Most of the living things in the largest habitat on our planet are still strangers to us, and the ocean is in no hurry to introduce them all at once. It reveals them slowly, a few thousand a year, at the pace of patient looking. We've spent this part of the night wondering how many kinds of life the deep still hides from us. But there's another layer of not knowing that's even more intimate, and we'll turn toward it next. Because it isn't only the creatures we've never met that keep their secrets. Even the ones we have found, the ones we've named and filmed and studied, live most of their lives entirely out of our sight. And how little we truly know them is its own quiet wonder. The lives we still don't understand. What about the creatures we have found? How much of their lives do we actually know? That's where we settle in now. And it turns out that even for the animals we've named and filmed and studied, most of their existence unfolds somewhere we can't watch. We know their faces, in a sense, without ever really knowing their days. Let's start close to home. Think about how much we understand about the familiar animals of the land. We know when a robin nests, how long a fox lives, where the geese go when the season turns. That knowledge came from watching generations of people observing these creatures season after season, following them through their whole lives until the shape of those lives grew clear and ordinary to us. Now take all of that patient watching away. That's the situation in the deep. For a great many creatures down there, we've only ever caught a glimpse, a single encounter, a few minutes of footage, one animal seen once and never again. And from those fragments, we're asked to guess at an entire life. How they're born, how they find one another, how long they last. Much of it, for much of the deep, remains genuinely unknown. But the reason isn't what you'd expect. It isn't that these animals are too strange to understand. It's that we so rarely get to be there. Their lives happen in the cold and the dark, far below the few visits we can ever make. And the most ordinary moments of those lives, the meeting, the mating, the slow growing up, almost always happen while no one is looking. Let me give you one story that shows just how different a deep sea life can be. Off a stretch of the Pacific, researchers came upon a deep sea octopus, a female, settled against a rocky ledge, guarding a clutch of eggs. That in itself isn't unusual. Many octopuses guard their eggs. What was unusual was how long she stayed. The scientists returned and returned and returned again, over and over, watching that same mother hold her post. And she brooded those eggs for around 4.5 years, more than 50 months, without leaving, slowly tending them in the cold and the dark until they were ready to hatch. Rest on that for a moment. 4.5 years of quiet, patient guarding, the longest such vigil known for any animal, anywhere. And we only know about it because the team happened to find her and happened to keep coming back for years to that one spot on the seafloor. Had they looked away, we'd never have known such patience was even possible. And the cost of that vigil was her own life, quietly spent. Through all those years, she almost certainly never left to hunt, and likely ate little or nothing at all, slowly growing paler and thinner as she stayed, giving over her own body to the single work of keeping her eggs safe and clean and washed with fresh water. By the time they hatched, she would have had almost nothing left. It's one of the tenderest bargains in all of nature. A life poured out in the cold and the dark so that a cluster of small lives might begin. And it happened where no one was ever meant to see. There's a reason lives run so long and so slow down there. In the deep cold, the pace of living itself seems to stretch out. Bodies work more slowly in that chill, and it appears that this slowness is tied to unusually long lives, long childhoods, long everything. Time, in a sense, moves differently in the cold and the dark, not faster or slower on the clock, but in the unhurried rhythm of the creatures keeping it. That stretching of time can reach almost unbelievable lengths. In the deep and the cold, some animals appear to live not for years, but for centuries. There is a shark of the far northern waters thought to live for hundreds of years, perhaps longer than any other creature with a backbone, drifting slowly through frigid dark, growing at a pace almost too gentle to measure. And in certain deep corals, a single colony may be thousands of years old, a living thing that was already ancient when much of human history had yet to happen. We tend to assume long life is rare and remarkable. Down there, in the cold and the quiet, it may be closer to the ordinary way of things. And that opens another question. If some deep lives are so hidden, how much are we truly missing? Consider one of the oldest puzzles in the study of the sea, and one of the most quietly astonishing. There are certain eels that live much of their lives in familiar waters, and then, near the end, set off on a long journey out into the open ocean to breed. People have studied these eels for well over a century, and in all that time, with all that effort, no one has ever directly witnessed them spawning in the open sea. Their exact breeding grounds, the precise routes they take to get there, these remain uncertain even now. An animal we've known and named and eaten for generations, and still we've never quite followed it home to where its life begins and ends. And the strangeness runs deeper than the missing map. These eels begin life as something you would never recognize as an eel at all. A tiny, clear, leaf-shaped drifter, thin as a sliver of glass, riding the ocean currents for a long while before it ever takes its familiar shape. Then, near the end of the story, the grown eel sets off on its one long journey out to sea, and as far as anyone can tell, spawns a single time, and does not come back. A whole life bent toward one far-off act that no human has ever watched. Born as one thing, ending as another, in a place we have never found. Let that reach you gently. Not a rare, exotic creature in some untouched trench, a familiar one, studied for lifetimes, and still holding the most important secret of its life, just out of our reach. Let's follow this back a little, because this hidden quality reaches even to the very start of these creatures' lives. The young of deep-sea animals often look nothing like their parents. so little like them in fact, that early scientists were fooled again and again, pulling up a small strange larva and naming it as its own separate kind of animal, never guessing it was simply the child of a creature they already knew. A whole imagined menagerie of species that turned out to be babies in disguise. It took patient work to untangle matching the young forms to the adults they'd become, sometimes only by reading the fine threads of their inner makeup, to prove that this larva and that adult were, all along, the same animal at different stages. Think about what that means. For some of these creatures, we couldn't even tell the child from the parent. We had them filed as strangers to each other when they were the same life, simply caught at different moments. That's how partial our view of the deep can be, partial enough that a single animal could hide inside our records as two. It's worth pausing on what that really means for what we know. A photograph is not a life. A single sighting, however clear, is a held breath, one instant lifted out of years we never saw. We have a great many of those held breaths now, bright and sharp and real. But a life is the quiet stretch between them, the ordinary days no lens was ever there for. And of that, the actual living, we still have almost nothing at all. Our whole sense of these animals, then, is stitched together from instants. It's real, but it's sparse, a handful of bright frames, standing in for lives measured in years, and sometimes in centuries. The dark keeps the rest. And for a great many deep-sea species, we've still never watched a full life play out from beginning to end, never followed one from its start, through its growing, to its finish, in the wild. We hold snapshots, a larva here, an adult there, a mother guarding eggs on a ledge, but the thread that connects them, the whole continuous life, slips mostly through our fingers, lived out in a darkness we can only visit. And if any of this has grown hazy, let it. None of it is yours to carry. Let it dim like a lamp lowered into the deep and sink a little further into rest, because underneath all of it, there's something worth holding, gently as you rest. Even the creatures we've met, the ones with names, the ones we've photographed and studied and grown fond of, are living right now, lives that are mostly invisible to us. Their days are unfolding in the deep, as they always have. The meetings we'll never see, the young we'll never watch grow, the slow patient years passing in the cold and the dark, far from any light or any eye. There's a quiet dignity in that when you think about it. These animals don't perform for us. They don't wait to be watched. They simply live fully, completely, whether or not we're ever there to witness a single moment of it. A mother octopus keeps her 4-year vigil in the dark with no one watching, and it matters just as much for being unseen. Whole lives, lived to the end, in perfect privacy. There's a quiet grace in letting them keep it. Not everything needs to be seen to be real, or watched to matter. Somewhere tonight, a creature of the deep is doing something no one will ever record, turning in the dark, tending its young, drifting slowly toward home, and it is complete exactly as it is, unwitnessed and untroubled. You can let it stay hidden. You can even feel a little glad that it gets to. And here's what we can say with some honesty about all of it. What we know of these creatures are the fragments the deep has let us glimpse, the brief encounters, the lucky footage, the rare long look. And what we don't know is nearly everything in between, the ordinary, unbroken living that fills the space between our glimpses. not because the science has failed, simply because we so seldom get to be there, in the dark, when the real living happens. So we hold it the way we've held everything tonight, lightly and with a kind of wonder. On one side, real knowledge, the mother on her ledge, the eel's long journey, the larva matched at last to its parent. On the other, the vast, quiet privacy of lives lived where we cannot follow. Both true, both worth resting beside. For a while now, we've stayed with the creatures whose lives remain hidden even after we've found them. But there's a deeper kind of question still waiting, not about how these animals live, but about how anything manages to live at all, in places that seem built to allow no life whatsoever. The parts of the deep where the water is scalding, or the pressure absolute, or the dark unbroken by even a scrap of food from above. And how life holds on there, that quiet mystery is where we turn next. Life in extreme places. How does anything manage to live where life seems impossible? That's a question we lower ourselves into now, because so far tonight, the deep has been dark and cold and far away. But there are places down there that are stranger still, places that should, by every reasonable expectation, be entirely lifeless, and yet they aren't. That's the quiet marvel we settle beside for a while. Let's start with the old picture. For a long time, people assumed that all life on Earth traced back, in the end, to sunlight. Plants catch the sun and turn it into food. Animals eat the plants, or eat each other. And so the energy of a single star works its way through every living thing. It's a tidy picture, and for almost everything we knew, it held. So the deep seafloor, sunless and starved of the scraps that fall from above, seemed like it ought to be close to empty. A cold, dark plain where little could survive. And then, some decades ago, that picture cracked wide open. Explorers reached certain places on the deep sea floor where heat rises up from within the earth and found them crowded with life. Not sparse, not clinging on, thriving. Whole communities of creatures gathered in the dark, far from any sunlight, living densely in a place that should have been barren. It was one of those discoveries that quietly rearranges what you thought you knew. To stand there, or to see it through the eyes of the machines that go down in our place, is to meet a sight no one had prepared for. Around the warm flow, where the water shimmers up out of the sea floor, life crowds in pale, soft-bodied creatures anchored in swaying clusters, ghost white crabs picking their way over the rock, shrimp gathered so thickly they blur together, whole gardens of the living pressed close to the warmth. Just beyond the reach of it, the seafloor falls back to the usual bare, cold plain. But right there, at the source, in the deepest dark, is an oasis dense and busy and utterly alive, in the one place we were most certain would be empty. Here's the simple version of how that's even possible. In those places, life doesn't run on sunlight at all. It runs on chemistry. Tiny living things there draw their energy straight from the chemicals rising up out of the seafloor, turning that raw chemical energy into food and feeding everything else in turn. An entire web of life built from the ground up, powered not by a distant star, but by the earth itself. Sunlight, in these places, is beside the point, and some of the creatures gathered there make their living in a way stranger than any of it. Take the tall, soft-bodied animals that stand near the warm flow, swaying gently in the rising water. Many of them have no mouth at all, and no stomach, and no way of feeding as we would understand it. Instead, they carry their food makers inside their own bodies, vast multitudes of the tiny chemical feeders housed within their tissues, quietly turning the seafloor's raw chemistry into nourishment and passing it straight to their host. The animal doesn't hunt or graze or search. It simply anchors itself where the warm, rich water rises, holds still, and is fed from within by the smallest life it shelters. Two kinds of living thing folded into one, making a single life together in the dark. Dwell on that for a moment, because it's genuinely one of the more beautiful facts about our planet. Life found a second way, a whole path to living that owes nothing to the sun hidden away in the deepest, darkest places, quietly running on the warmth and chemistry of the world's own interior. And here's why that mattered so much. That discovery didn't just add a strange new habitat to the list. It challenged one of the oldest assumptions scientists had carried for generations, that nearly all life in the end depended on the sun. And it turned out there were exceptions, whole communities of them thriving in the dark. Life, it seems, is broader than that and more inventive. It can root itself in chemistry as readily as in light, given the chance. And once we knew to look, we found that this way of living wasn't confined to those first few sites. Communities running on chemistry rather than sunlight have since been found in other dark corners of the world, 2 other places on the seafloor, and even in settings far from the deep ocean, wherever the right conditions quietly allow it. It appears to be less a rare exception and more a recurring theme, one of life's standing options, waiting wherever the chemistry is right. And there's one more version of this that's almost unbearably lovely. When one of the great whales dies, far out at sea, its enormous body sinks slowly down through the water and comes to rest at last on the deep sea floor. And there, in the cold and the dark, it becomes an island of life. First, the scavengers arrive, drawn from miles around to feed on what the whale has left. Then, over months and years, smaller and stranger communities move in, including creatures that live, once again, on chemistry, drawing their energy from the slow breakdown of the body itself. A single fallen whale can feed the deep for years, an unexpected oasis, blooming in the middle of the empty plain, fading only slowly as the last of it is given back to the sea. Even in death, the great animals go on making life possible, in a place that offers so little of its own. Now let's move in a little closer, because there are different kinds of these places, and one of them is especially worth a moment. In some spots, the water rising from the seafloor isn't only hot, it's chemically strange, shaped by a slow reaction between seawater and the rock deep below. That reaction quietly produces the very ingredients that certain living things can use, and it can build tall, pale, mineral towers on the seafloor over long spans of time. Picture them, if you like, quiet spires standing in the dark, slowly raised not by any creature, but by the patient chemistry of rock and water meeting, where the earth's warmth seeps through. You don't have to hold on to the mechanics of that. What matters most is the feeling of it, that the deep builds strange architecture of its own and gathers life around it, in total darkness, with no help from the sun at all. There's a quiet wonder in that alone. We tend to think of structures in the deep as the work of living things, reefs, shells, the built homes of creatures. But these towers are raised by nothing alive at all, just water meeting rock over centuries and far longer, patiently stacking mineral upon mineral into pale spires that stand in the blackness like the ruins of something no one designed. And around them, drawn by the same chemistry that builds them, life quietly gathers. The architecture and its inhabitants, both conjured out of the same slow meeting of stone and sea. Nothing planned it. It simply happened and goes on happening, quietly, in the dark. Which brings a question quietly to the surface. If these communities are scattered across the deep, far from one another, how do they find each other at all? And here's where we cross gently from what we know into what we don't. Because the honest truth is that how life spreads and stays connected between these scattered places is still not well understood. These sites can lie far apart, separated by long stretches of ordinary seafloor. And yet, again and again, life turns up at them. How the young of these creatures travel across all that distance, how a community starts and holds on and reaches the next place remains largely an open question. We can see the results. We can't yet fully trace the path. Let's slow that down for a second, because it's a strange thing to picture. Imagine scattered gardens, each one flourishing, separated by great reaches of empty ground, and no clear sense of how the seeds get from one to the next. That's roughly where we stand. The gardens are real, the life is real, but the quiet traffic between them, the way one becomes many across all that dark distance, is something we're still working to understand. And there's more we can't yet say. We don't really know how many of these places are out there. We've found a number of them in the parts of the seafloor we've managed to reach, but given how little of the deep we've truly explored, it seems likely that many more are down there, undiscovered, quietly supporting communities no one has ever seen. Nor do we fully understand how these communities last over long spans of time, how they endure as conditions shift, how they weather the slow changes of the deep. Much about their lives and their futures remains genuinely open. And if you've drifted loose from the details here, that's good. There's nothing to keep. Let them pass through you the way deep water passes slow and dark and going somewhere else. Because beneath all the specifics, there's something worth resting on. Life, it turns out, is far more stubborn and more resourceful than we once believed. Give it almost any foothold, a little energy, from almost any source, and it seems to find a way to take hold. Even in the cold, even in the dark, even in the crushing deep, far from the sun, in places we assumed could never hold a living thing. Life gathers there anyway, quietly, and makes a home. There's something steadying in that, if you let it settle over you. The living world is not as fragile or as narrow as it can sometimes seem. It reaches into the harshest corners of the planet and simply carries on glowing softly, feeding, enduring, in rooms of the world we've barely opened the door to. Whatever else is uncertain about the deep, this much feels steady life is there, holding on, in places that seem to allow no life at all. Let that be the thing you carry down toward sleep, if you carry anything at all. Not the chemistry, not the names, just the steady, simple fact of it. That in the coldest, darkest, most crushing corner of the world, where nothing was supposed to be, life leaned in and took hold anyway. It found the one warm seam in all that dark and gathered there, and made something tender and thriving out of almost nothing. If life can do that down there quietly, with none of us watching, then it is a far more determined and far more generous thing than we ever gave it credit for. And that is a good thought to rest in. And that raises a question that has quietly pulled at scientists ever since these places were found. If life can begin from nothing but chemistry and warmth in the dark, could it be that life itself, all of it, ours included, started somewhere very much like this? That the whole long story began not in the sunlight, but far below it, in the quiet dark of the deep? That's a question worth stepping towards slowly, and it's where we turn next. Where it all began. Could life itself have started somewhere down here, in the dark? That's the question we step toward now slowly, and with a light touch, because it's one of the biggest questions there is, and one of the least settled. We'll stay honest about that the whole way through. Some of what follows is genuinely known. Much of it is still open, still debated, still waiting for an answer no one yet holds. Let's walk through it slowly. We ended our last stretch with a quiet marvel, that in certain places on the deep sea floor, life thrives on chemistry alone, drawing its energy from the earth rather than the sun. Whole communities, gathered in the dark, powered by the warmth and chemistry rising out of the world's interior. And that discovery didn't just add a strange new habitat to the map. It reshaped an old assumption, the idea that nearly all living things ultimately depend on sunlight. And here's the leap that follows from it. The reason this discovery reaches so much further than a single strange habitat. If life can hold on down there right now, on nothing but chemistry and warmth in the dark, then maybe the deep was never only a place life spread into. Maybe it was the place life came from, not some sunlit pool at the surface, but far below in the quiet dark, where the Earth's own chemistry could do the work of starting everything. Here's what we can say with some certainty. Scientists broadly agree that life on Earth began an extraordinarily long time ago, billions of years back, in the planet's distant youth. On roughly when life appeared, there's fair agreement. It's the how and the where that remain wide open. Consider how long ago that really was. Not thousands of years or millions, but thousands of millions, a stretch of time so vast the mind can't really hold it, only lean toward it and go quiet. Life appeared while the Earth was still young and strange, and it has been continuous ever since, an unbroken thread of living things reaching all the way from that distant beginning to the breath you're taking right now. Every creature that has ever lived is a single link in that one long chain, and its very first link is the thing we're trying, and mostly failing, to see. And here's what we simply can't say yet. We don't know how life began. Not really. The leap from a lifeless world of chemistry to the first living thing is one of the deepest unanswered questions in all of science, and it is still genuinely, actively debated. No one holds the answer. What we have instead are careful ideas, thoughtful, competing possibilities, each with something to recommend it, none yet proven. One of those possibilities has grown steadily more popular over recent decades. It suggests that life's very first chemistry may have taken shape near the deep sea, places where warm, mineral-rich water rises from the seafloor. The reasoning has a certain quiet appeal. These places offer energy, and the right raw ingredients, and a steady, sheltered setting, the sort of conditions where the delicate first steps toward life might, just possibly, have found a footing. Picture the setting. The idea asks you to imagine no sun, no sky, no violence at the surface, just warm water seeping up through porous rock, endlessly in the dark. A place that is sheltered without being still, full of energy without being harsh, steady in a way the surface of a young storm-battered planet may not have been. If the first uncertain steps toward life needed somewhere quiet and constant to take hold, the reasoning goes, it isn't hard to see why the deep keeps drawing the eye. Notice the word that matters most here, though possibly. This is a hypothesis, one idea among several. It has grown more popular, yes, but popularity isn't proof, and it's important to hold the difference. The oldest of the rival pictures is a gentle one, sketched more than a century ago, a small, warm pool at the surface, sunlit and shallow, where the right ingredients might have gathered and slowly stirred themselves into something living. Others imagine hot springs on land, or the thin films of water clinging to clay, or the edges of tide pools filling and drying with the turning of each day. A few wonder whether the first ingredients drifted in from somewhere beyond the earth entirely. Each picture has its champions, each has its difficulties, and none has yet been able to close the case. And this is the part worth stating plainly. There are several serious competing ideas about how life began, and none of them has reached anything like scientific consensus. The deep sea idea is a leading contender. It is not the settled truth. Anyone who tells you we know life started at the bottom of the sea is getting ahead of the science. And that points to the real question. If it's only an idea, what's it actually built on? Part of what draws scientists to the deep sea possibility is a set of quiet resemblances. When they look closely at the chemistry unfolding naturally in those warm seafloor settings, they notice echoes of the core chemistry found inside living cells, similarities striking enough to make people wonder whether the one might have given rise to the other. It's suggestive. It's the kind of parallel that makes a hypothesis worth taking seriously. But a resemblance is not a proof, and the people doing this work are careful to say so. To feel why the resemblance catches the eye, it helps to picture how a living cell actually works. At its core, life runs on flow on small differences from one side of a thin membrane to the other. Charged particles gathered on one side and let across to the other, and that steady trickle used to power nearly everything the cell does. It's less like a fire and more like a slow current, a gradient, quietly doing work. And in certain of those warm seafloor settings, something faintly similar arises all on its own, where the rising mineral water meets the ordinary sea. Natural gradients form across thin mineral walls, in little pockets and channels in the rock, not so unlike the tiny chambers of a cell. Nothing alive is happening there, but the raw shape of it, the flow, the gradient, the sheltered compartments rhymes with the machinery inside every living thing. And it's that rhyme, more than any single fact, that keeps the idea alive. In fact, one way scientists test an idea like this is to try to reproduce those first crucial steps to see whether the chemistry that supposedly kick-started life can actually happen the way the theory needs it to. And when researchers put a key assumption of the deep sea idea to that kind of test, they found it may be less straightforward than had been hoped, that the path from chemistry to life might not have been quite as easy as the tidy version suggests. That's not a verdict against the idea. It's the ordinary, honest work of science, poking at a beautiful hypothesis to see how much weight it can really bear. And there's a deeper reason the question stays open, one no amount of cleverness can fully undo. Whatever happened almost unimaginably long ago, and the Earth has not sat still since. Its surface has been remade many times over, the oldest rocks folded away or worn down to nothing, the earliest chemistry scattered far beyond recovery. So there is no scene to return to, no first page still lying there to be read. It is a little like trying to make out the opening of a story from a book whose first chapters have mostly crumbled to dust. What's left are hints and echoes and patient reconstructions, and the honest possibility that some of the beginning is simply lost to us for good. And if none of this is landing anymore, that's fine. None of it is yours to resolve tonight. The greatest minds haven't resolved it either. You're in good company, not knowing. Let's pull back for a moment, gently, because there's something quietly moving about this whole question, and it's worth resting in for a moment. Whether or not life began in the deep has become one of the places we look when we ask where we came from. There's a kind of poetry in that. We are creatures of light and air, standing at the surface, gazing down into the dark water, and wondering if that's the room where it all started, if the first flicker of living chemistry took hold somewhere down there, ages ago, in warmth and darkness, and everything since, every plant, every animal, every one of us unfolded slowly out of that single quiet beginning. It might be true, it might not. And there's a quiet freedom in being able to say that honestly, to stand at the edge of the biggest question we have, and simply admit we don't know yet. Here's what we can hold, and it's steady ground. Life found a way to run on chemistry in the dark. That much we've seen with our own instruments. And that discovery keeps a door open, a real serious door, to the possibility that the deep sea was life's first cradle. Whether that door leads where we think, no one can yet say. It remains an open question, one of the most patient and profound we know how to ask. Let that rest a moment, and then we'll go on. Because it changes the feeling of the deep, doesn't it? To think that this dark, cold, faraway place might not be foreign to us at all. That it might, in some distant sense, be where we're from. The oldest home, the first quiet room, still there beneath all that water, keeping its secret about how the whole long story began. We so often think of the deep sea as the most alien place on Earth, the farthest from us, the least like the sunlit world we know. And maybe it's nearly the opposite. Maybe it's the most ancestral place there is. Not a stranger at all, but a beginning. We can't be sure, but the possibility alone is enough to make the dark water feel a little less cold and a little more like something we're quietly connected to. There's a tenderness in carrying a question like this to the edge of sleep. Not to answer it, just to hold it lightly for a while. The way you might hold any large and beautiful thing you don't fully understand. Somewhere far below, the warm water is still rising from the rock, exactly as it has for longer than there have been eyes to see it. Whether or not it was the cradle, it is doing now what it has always done, meeting the cold sea in the dark. quietly making the kind of place where something like life could gather. The work goes on down there tonight, patient and unwatched, as you let the day go. There's one more mystery of the deep worth a moment tonight, and it's a softer one, not about where life began, but about what the ocean has been trying to tell us. Because the deep isn't only dark and still, it's also full of sound. And some of those sounds we've come to understand, while others linger gently just past the edge of explanation. That's where we drift next, the sounds in the dark. What does the deep ocean sound like? And what happens when we hear something we can't explain? That's where we drift next, because the deep isn't only dark and cold and still, it's also full of sound. Water carries sound beautifully farther and more faithfully than air ever could. And so the ocean is, in its own way, a place that speaks. Tonight, near the end of our journey, let's simply listen for a while. Let's begin by listening. For many years, scientists have kept underwater microphones listening in the deep patient instruments, resting far below the surface, catching whatever sounds come drifting through the water. And a great deal comes through. The groan of shifting ice, the rumble of the seafloor, the long, low calls of great whales traveling across enormous distances, the steady hiss and stir of the moving water itself. The deep turns out to be a surprisingly noisy place, full of voices both living and not. And it carries further than you might think. There is a certain depth in the ocean where sound behaves strangely well, where, once a sound enters, it can travel for thousands of miles with almost none of the fading that would swallow it in the open air. A low call made in one corner of the sea can slip into that layer and be carried, faint but whole, clear across an entire ocean basin. It's part of why the deep feels so full of voices. A sound that would die close to home up here simply keeps going down there, gathered and ferried along through the dark. The ocean doesn't only hold sound, it passes it hand to hand across enormous distances. Some of the great whales seem to know this. Their lowest calls appear to be pitched to ride exactly that long traveling layer, so that a single voice, sung in the dark, might reach another of its kind an ocean away. Whether that's the whole reason, no one can say for certain. But it's a lovely thought that the largest animals ever to live may be using the sea itself as a way to call across the world. Most of what those microphones catch can be traced, in time, to something familiar. But now and then, a sound arrives that doesn't match anything on the list. And when that happens, the scientists do something rather charming. They give it a nickname. A friendly, almost playful name for a sound they can't yet place. It's a small human gesture, and a telling one, naming the mystery while they work out what it is. There's something quietly lovely in that habit. It's the sound of people meeting the unknown without fear, not slapping a hard label on it, not spinning a story to be rid of the discomfort, but giving it a gentle name and settling in to listen a little longer. A nickname is a kind of patience. It says, we don't know yet, and that's all right, and we'll stay with it until we do. But here's what usually happens next though. A sound the scientists can't immediately identify is not a sound that stays unexplained forever. Far more often, it's simply a puzzle that hasn't been solved, yet a loose thread they keep gently pulling until it comes free. Let me tell you about the most famous of these, because it's the perfect example of how these mysteries usually go. Some years back, the listening instruments picked up an enormous sound in the deep low, and powerful and strange. So powerful, in fact, that it was caught by sensors spread across thousands of kilometers of ocean. Thousands of kilometers. A single sound heard across a stretch of sea wider than some countries. It didn't quite match anything the scientist had on file, and it was given one of those affectionate nicknames, and for a while it sat there unexplained and irresistibly mysterious. Now, you can imagine how a sound like that might catch the imagination. Something vast, down in the dark, loud enough to be heard across an ocean. It's easy to let the mind run somewhere dramatic, but here's what patient science found. As the researchers kept listening, kept gathering more recordings, kept comparing that strange sound against others, they landed on a quiet, natural explanation. The sound was consistent with the noise of a great mass of ice cracking and breaking apart. An icequake, in effect the enormous groan of ice fracturing far away, carrying across the sea. Not a creature, not anything strange at all in the end. Just the sound of ice doing what ice does, on a scale large enough to be heard from very far away. And what convinced them wasn't a hunch. Their listening instruments, positioned nearer to the great fields of ice, recorded many of these icy sounds and found that they closely matched the mysterious one. The fingerprint lined up. The nickname could quietly be retired. A mystery, gently solved. That's worth a second's pause, because it's a small lesson in how to hold the unknown. For a while, that sound was genuinely unexplained, and in that while, it would have been easy tempting, even to fill the silence with something wilder. But the scientists simply kept listening and kept comparing and let the answer arrive in its own time. And the answer, when it came, was quieter and stranger and lovelier than any invented one. The sound of ice, breaking somewhere far off in the cold, loud enough to cross an ocean. Here's what the record shows then. Many of the deep's mysterious sounds do get explained in the end, traced back to ice, or to the movements of the seafloor, or to the voices of animals' natural sources, found through patience. The mystery isn't a monster. It's usually just a piece of the natural world we hadn't yet learned to recognize. Which leaves one honest question: are they all explained? And here's what still isn't settled. Not every sound has been fully pinned down. There are a few that scientists have a general sense of a likely neighborhood, a probable kind of source, perhaps something to do with distant underwater volcanic activity, but whose exact origin still isn't settled. They sit in a gentle in-between, not wholly mysterious, not fully solved, likely natural, not yet confirmed. Part of why some sounds stay uncertain comes down to a simple matter of listening. To pin down exactly where a sound came from, scientists generally need to catch it on several instruments at once and compare the timing the way you might sense which direction a voice came from by hearing it in both ears. A sound caught on only one instrument is much harder to place. It could have traveled a great distance before it was heard, from a source somewhere out in the dark that no other microphone happened to catch. So it lingers, half known real and recorded, but never quite located. There's no unkindness in that, and no alarm in it either. It only means the ocean is large, and our ears within it are still few. A single instrument, alone in all that water, catches a sound the way you might catch one word carried on the wind from far off, clearly enough to know it's real, not clearly enough to know exactly who spoke, or from how far, or in which direction. More listeners, spread wider, would close the gap, and slowly, year by year, more are added. And if you've stopped listening closely, that's fine, there's nothing here to keep. Let the sounds move on through the dark, the way they always have, with or without a listener. Because underneath all of it, there's a shape worth resting on, and it's the same gentle shape we've met again and again tonight. Some of the ocean's sounds we've come to understand. Some of them we haven't. Not fully, not yet. And both of those are perfectly all right. The solved ones and the open ones sit side by side in the same dark water, and neither one is cause for alarm. That's worth holding on to, especially here in the quiet of the evening. An unexplained sound in the deep isn't a threat. It's just a question the ocean has asked that we haven't finished answering. And the history of these sounds is reassuring. When you look at it one by one, the mysterious ones tend to become the understood ones, ice and stone, and living voices given enough patient listening. There's no reason to think the remaining few are anything stranger. If anything, the pattern runs the other way. Every sound that once seemed impossible to place and was later traced to its source makes the next unexplained one a little less frightening. One more reason to expect ice or stone or some living thing rather than anything out of a story. The unknown here has a track record, and it's a gentle one. It keeps turning out to be the world, just parts of the world we hadn't been introduced to yet. Think of it this way. The deep ocean is speaking, more or less constantly groaning and rumbling and singing to itself in the dark, whether or not anyone is there to hear. We've only recently begun to listen closely, and like anyone learning a new language, we understand some of it already, and some of it still washes past us as sound we can't yet pass. That's not failure. That's just where we are in the listening partway through, still learning the words. And the language is exactly the right way to think of it. We're not decoding a threat or a riddle set for us. We're simply learning to understand a place that has been speaking all along, in a tongue far older than any of ours, the grammar of ice and water and stone, the long vowels of the great animals, the slow consonants of the moving earth. Some of its words we've learned, most we haven't, and there's no hurry in the learning, because the ocean is in no hurry in the speaking. There's something peaceful in that image, once you stop straining to grasp it all. All that dark water, alive with sound, the far-off breaking of ice, the slow movements of the seafloor, the long, low songs of unseen animals crossing the deep, a whole hidden soundscape, most of it unheard by us, playing on quietly night after night in a place we've barely entered. It doesn't need an audience. It simply sounds and sounds in the dark. You don't have to listen for any of it. It asks nothing of you. But it might be a soft thing to drift off toward the thought of all that gentle, aimless sound down there. The ice and the stone and the far singing, carrying on through the night with no one awake to hear it. A whole world murmuring to itself in the dark, keeping you company without ever needing you at all. And now our journey begins, gently, to widen. We've spent this night moving through the deep, how little we've seen of it. What lies there, how life holds on, where it all might have begun, and the sounds that drift up out of the dark. But the deep ocean isn't only a place of its own mysteries, it's also quietly holding the whole planet steady in ways that reach all the way up to the sky and the weather and the world we wake to each morning. That larger, slower role is where we turn as the night deepens. The deep ocean and the climate. How does this quiet, faraway place help hold the whole world steady? That's where we turn as the night deepens. And to begin to feel the answer, you don't need a single number yet. You only need to picture the place where the ocean meets the sky. All across the world, right now, the sea and the air are touching. Along every coastline, out across every wide and empty stretch of open water, the surface of the ocean presses up against the underside of the sky, and the two of them, endlessly, are in conversation. They lean into one another and trade what they hold warmth passing one way and then the other, moisture rising and returning, unseen gases moving quietly back and forth across that vast shifting seam. It has been going on for as long as there has been an ocean and an air above it to meet, a slow, planet-wide breathing so constant and so gentle that we almost never think to notice it at all. And in that endless exchange, the sea does something quietly extraordinary, something that reaches far past the water itself, all the way up into the air we breathe and the weather we wake to. It takes things in, it holds them, and much of what it holds, it carries downward into the long keeping of the deep. That's the thread we'll follow now, the slow, patient way the deep ocean, of all places, helps hold the whole world steady. Let's take it gently and in order. Here's what actually happens. A large share of the carbon dioxide that enters the air each year doesn't stay up in the sky. The ocean draws a good portion of it in somewhere around a third, pulling it down out of the air and into the water. Roughly a third. Quietly, at the surface, all over the world, the sea is taking in a great deal of what would otherwise gather above us. It has been doing this steadily, year upon year, a patient sink for something the rest of the world keeps producing. And it isn't only carbon. The ocean takes in heat too, and here the figure is even harder to believe. Of all the extra warmth that has been building up in the Earth system, the ocean has absorbed the overwhelming majority, on the order of 9/10. Nearly all of that added heat not left to linger in the air around us, but drawn down instead into the great cool body of the sea and carried away. Weigh that for a moment, because it's genuinely one of the most important things the ocean quietly does. The sea has been taking in the overwhelming share of the world's extra warmth holding it, spreading it slowly through its enormous body of water, softening what the surface world would otherwise feel. A steady, patient buffer, working without pause, almost entirely out of sight. Every day you have ever lived has been gentler than it would otherwise have been, because of water you will never see. And here's where the story goes deeper, though, because when the ocean takes in warmth and carbon at the surface, that is not the end of it. Much of it doesn't simply stay up top. It travels down. There's a slow, quiet process that carries carbon from the sunlit surface into the deep. Tiny living things near the top take in carbon as they grow, and when they die or are eaten, some of that carbon begins to sink, drifting down and down into the dark water below, where it settles far from the air. It's sometimes pictured as a kind of gentle, endless rain, a soft, ceaseless downward drift, always falling, always carrying a little more of the world's carbon out of the bright surface and into the dark, and leaving it there. To picture it is to slow right down. It isn't a downpour. It's the softest snow imaginable, drifting through water that never sees weather flecks of the once living, of shell and skin, and the tiny bodies of the surface's smallest lives, settling silently through hundreds and thousands of meters of dark over days and weeks, to come to rest at last on the floor of the world. Scientists have a gentle name for it. They call it marine snow, and it has been falling without pause since long before anyone was here to name it a quiet, endless sinking that carries the surface, piece by piece, down into the keeping of the deep. And once it reaches the deep, it tends to stay for a very long time. The deep ocean mixes only slowly with the surface. The water down there turns over on timescales that dwarf a human life, so carbon carried into the depths can rest there for centuries, and often far longer, held quietly in the cold and the dark. Whatever drifts down settles into a slowness almost beyond our reckoning. Let that timescale stretch out for a moment, because it's worth feeling. We live our lives on the scale of days and years. The deep ocean keeps time differently. When carbon sinks into the depths, it isn't gone for a season or a lifetime, but for stretches of time so long they blur past anything we normally imagine. The deep holds things patiently, far more patiently than we know how to. It takes the world's carbon and keeps it, quietly, across spans of time that make our own lives seem like the single blink of an eye. Here's one image to hold on to. The deep ocean is something like a slow, steady heart at the center of the planet's climate, taking in warmth and carbon, holding them, moving them gently through its vast dark body over ages. It doesn't rush. It works on the longest of rhythms, the ones we can barely perceive. And through that patient, unhurried work, it plays a central part in steadying the pace of change across the whole world. And that heart doesn't only hold, it moves. Across the whole planet, the ocean turns over in slow, enormous loops, warm water sliding toward the poles, cooling there, growing heavy, sinking down into the deep, and creeping back along the bottom over hundreds and hundreds of years before it rises again somewhere far away. It's a circulation so vast and so unhurried that no single lifetime could ever watch one drop complete the journey. And as it turns, it carries warmth from where there is too much of it, toward where there is too little, softening the fierce places, gentling the cold ones, spreading the world's heat around, like a slow hand smoothing a blanket. Much of the mildness of the world we know rests quietly on that patient, invisible turning. There's something quietly moving in that, when you let it land. This place we've spent all night calling remote and dark and hard to reach, it turns out to be doing one of the most important jobs on the whole planet, holding the world's warmth, keeping the world's carbon, steadying the sky from below without fuss, without stopping, without anyone watching or thanking it. The deep ocean has been looking after the surface world all along, in its own slow and silent way. None of this was arranged for us, and none of it waits on our attention. The sea was drawing down heat and carbon, and turning it slowly through the dark, long before anyone thought to measure it, and it would go on doing exactly the same if no one ever measured it again. That's part of what makes it such a restful thing to think about. It isn't a system we have to tend or fix or worry over tonight. It's simply there, enormous and calm and already at work, carrying on in the dark beneath us while we sleep. And if the figures have already slipped away, let them go. You don't need to hold the numbers, just the feeling that far beneath the waves, something vast and calm is quietly helping to keep the whole planet in balance. Let's widen the view once more, gently, because even in this great steadying work, the deep keeps its share of mystery. For all that we've learned about the ocean, taking in carbon and heat, exactly how all of it works is still not fully pinned down. The details of that slow downward drift, how much sinks, how it moves, how every piece fits together, remain an active area of study, with real and honest uncertainties still being worked out. What we can say plainly is this: the ocean absorbs a great share of the world's carbon and heat and steadies the climate as it does. And what still isn't fully understood is the fine machinery beneath it, the exact workings of the deep's slow breathing. Even the planet's great quiet stabilizer keeps a few of its secrets. There's one more thing worth holding softly, and it fits the spirit of everything tonight. The ocean's ability to keep taking all this in isn't limitless, and it doesn't stay exactly the same forever. The way it absorbs and holds can shift over time. We won't dwell there tonight. It's simply part of the honest picture that the deep does extraordinary, steadying work for the world, and that this work, like everything in the sea, has its own limits and its own slow changes. Let all of that go quiet for a moment and simply rest in the wonder of it. Picture it, if you like, one last time before we begin to rise. That immense body of dark water, stretching down and down beneath the surface, cold and quiet and mostly unseen. And all through it, a slow and steady work going on, warmth being drawn in and held, carbon drifting gently down from the light and settling into the deep, the whole vast ocean breathing on a rhythm so slow we can barely perceive it. Not dramatic, not hurried, just patient and constant and quietly essential to everything that lives up in the light. The deep isn't only a place of mysteries and hidden creatures then. It's also a caretaker, a slow, enormous, silent keeper of the world's balance, doing its work in the dark, asking nothing, expecting nothing, steadying the sky above it across ages we can hardly imagine. And there's a real and lasting comfort in knowing that beneath all our days and all our weather and all the small hurried turning of our lives, something so vast and so calm is holding steady, and has been holding steady for longer than there have been people to wonder about it. It was doing this quiet work long before us. It will go on doing it long after. And tonight, as you rest, it is doing it still. We've traveled a long way together tonight, down from the sunlit surface, through the dark and the cold, past the creatures we've met and the countless ones we haven't, into the places where life clings on and perhaps first began, through the strange sounds that drift up from below, and now into the deep's quiet care for the whole living world. It has been a long descent and a gentle one, and as our night draws toward its close, there is just one soft thing left to consider: what it means to stand at the very edge of all we still don't know, and to find there, waiting, not a worry, but a kind of peace. That's where we drift, softly, to finish, A quiet future of discovery. What's left to find? And what does it mean to rest at the edge of all we don't yet know? That's the last soft place we settle tonight. We've come a long way down and a long way back. And now, as the night draws to its close, there's nothing left to figure out. Only something gentle to feel our way toward and then let go of as sleep comes. Let's take it slowly now, this last little while. We began at the surface, in the light, and we felt how little of the ocean we've truly seen. We drifted down through water that resists us at every meter, into a dark so complete it doesn't lift. We passed the creatures we've met, and wondered at the far greater number we haven't. We watched a mother octopus keep her long, patient vigil, and admitted how much of these hidden lives unfolds where we can't follow. We found life holding on in places that seemed to allow none, and asked gently, without answering, whether life itself might have begun somewhere down there in the dark. We listened to the sounds that rise from the deep, and learned that some we understand, and some we simply don't, not yet. And we felt the deep quietly steadying the whole world from below, in ways still being worked out. Look back along that path and notice what it's made of. Not a tidy row of answers, but a long, gentle string of open questions, each one leading softly into the next, each one larger and quieter than the last. We didn't close them tonight. We were never going to. We simply walked among them for a while in the dark and let them be what they are. That's a great deal of not knowing to carry. And here's what I'd like to leave you with. As the night settles, none of it is a problem. Think back to where we started, a long while ago now, drifting off from the sunlit surface. We said, right at the beginning, that the unknown down here isn't something to fear, that it's simply quiet and open and still being discovered, a little at a time. Everything since has only deepened that. We've spent the whole night among the deep's unanswered questions, and not one of them turned out to be frightening. They were only ever what they seemed, vast and patient, and perfectly content to stay unanswered a while longer. And maybe that's the quiet gift of a night like this, not to have learned the deep, but to have made peace with how much of it stays hidden. To have gone all the way down into the dark and found there, waiting, not something to solve, but something to trust. The not knowing turned out to be soft. It turned out to be a place you could rest. Here's the quiet truth about the deep ocean. The work of exploring it isn't finished, and it never quite will be. There will always be more down there, more seafloor no one has charted, more creatures no one has named, more questions no one has answered. Not because we failed to look, but because the deep is so vast and so patient that it will always have a little more to offer than we've managed to gather. And that isn't a sad thing, not at all. It's one of the loveliest things about the world we live on. There's a difference between an emptiness and an openness, and the deep is the second kind. Its blank spaces aren't hollow. They're full of things we simply haven't reached yet, lives and landscapes and answers, all of them already there, waiting with no impatience at all. To know that the world still holds that much wonder in reserve, this far into our looking, isn't a loss. It's a kind of abundance, the kind you can rest easy inside of. Because the work does go on, quietly, all the time. Every year, we come to know the deep a little better, a new stretch of the dark charted, a new creature met, another small patch of the unknown brought gently into the light, and the tools we look and listen with keep growing kinder and more patient, quiet machines that go where no person could, softer ways of sensing a life from the faintest trace it leaves behind. The map fills in slowly, never all at once, just a little more each year, at the unhurried pace of careful, loving attention. The future of the deep isn't a race to any finish line. It's a slow unfolding, a quiet promise that there will always be something new waiting, and always someone, someday, drifting down through the dark to find it. And there's one thing we can say for certain, and it's a peaceful thing to end on. Much of the deep ocean remains genuinely unknown to us, and that isn't a shortfall to be ashamed of. It's a frontier still open, still waiting, patient in the dark, not a failure of ours, a gift the world has kept in reserve for all the ones who'll come after us to wonder at it too. If your mind is drifting now, that's exactly right. You don't need to hold any of it. Let it all go soft. Now let's leave the facts behind entirely and simply rest in the picture of it. Imagine the ocean as it is right now, while you lie here not as a place on a map, but as a presence, immense and near. All that water, dark and calm, stretching down farther than any light can reach. It doesn't need you to understand it. It isn't waiting on anyone. It's simply there, vast and quiet, and going about its ancient work in the dark, just as it has through every night that has ever been. Every night you have ever slept, it was there, doing just this dark and vast and quietly at work. And every night still to come, it will be there again, exactly the same, older than worry, deeper than any question, always quietly there. Somewhere down there right now, a soft rain of tiny things is drifting slowly toward the bottom, the way it has for ages beyond counting. Somewhere, a creature no one has ever seen moves gently through the black water, glowing perhaps, or not alive and complete and entirely unbothered by whether we've found it. Somewhere, warm water rises from the seafloor, and life gathers around it in the dark, tended by nothing but the Earth's own quiet chemistry. Somewhere, a pale mineral tower stands in the blackness, raised grain by grain across centuries no one witnessed. Somewhere, far off, the ice is groaning, and the sound of it is traveling across the whole deep sea, unheard. Somewhere, an old, slow creature that has lived 100 years or more turns in the cold, in no hurry at all. Somewhere, a single eel is setting out on the last long journey of its life, bound for a place in the open sea that no one has ever found. Somewhere, a mother still keeps her watch over a clutch of eggs, exactly as she has for years, in a cold and a dark that ask everything of her. Somewhere, whole reaches of the seafloor lie unmapped and unlit, holding their shapes in the black, having never once been crossed by any eye. All of it at once. All of it tonight, while you rest. And all of it goes on without us. That's the peaceful part. The deep doesn't ask to be watched. It doesn't need to be finished or solved or fully known. It simply is turning slowly, keeping its warmth and its carbon and its countless quiet lives, holding the world steady from below while the surface sleeps. You are one of the sleeping tonight. Up here at the surface of the world, in the warm and the quiet, while far below, the great dark ocean keeps its watch, as it always has. There's a gentle kind of company in that. You aren't the only thing resting in the dark tonight. The whole deep is resting along with you. There's such rest in that, if you let it in. We spend so much of our waking lives needing to know, needing to sort things out, to have the answer, to close every open question before we'll let ourselves be at ease. And tonight, the deep offers you the opposite. It offers you permission to not know, to let the questions stay open, to let the dark water keep its secrets, and to find that not unsettling in the least, but calming, peaceful, even kind. There's a quiet mercy in that permission, if you'll take it. So much of the day asks you to be sure to decide, to solve, to have it handled. The night asks none of that, and neither does the deep. It has held its questions for millions of years without the smallest unease, and it invites you, just for tonight, to hold yours the same way loosely, gently, without needing to answer a single one before you sleep. Notice how rarely you're allowed that, to leave a thing unfinished and feel no pull to fix it, to sit beside a mystery with your hands open, wanting nothing from it. The deep has been doing exactly that since long before we came, and it will go on long after, carrying its unknowns without strain, holding its questions as though they weigh nothing at all. Let it teach you that, just for tonight. Let the open questions be light. You don't have to have the answers to fall asleep. No one does. The people who spend their whole lives studying the deep lie down each night, with most of it still unknown, and rest just the same. The unknown isn't waiting to trouble you. It's just resting there in the dark. The way you're resting here, both of you patient, both of you quiet, neither one needing to be anywhere but exactly where you are. Let the whole ocean hold them for you now. Every question we carried down here tonight, let them all sink gently to the bottom and settle, the way everything settles in the deep. Watch them go, turning over slowly as they fall, growing smaller and dimmer and quieter, until the dark closes softly over them and they come to rest on the floor of the world. You don't have to carry a single one into sleep. They'll keep. They've kept for ages. They'll keep a while longer in the dark without you. Feel how far down it goes beneath you. Layer after quiet layer, cool and calm and endless, all the way to a floor no light has ever touched. And every layer of it is at peace. Nothing down there is hurrying. Nothing is worried about what it doesn't know. The whole vast deep is simply resting in its own darkness, unhurried, unbothered, complete. Let yourself sink into that same stillness now, down past the surface, past the light, into the slow, quiet dark where nothing needs to be figured out, where there's nothing to solve and nowhere to be, and no question that can't wait until morning or forever. The deep will still be there tomorrow, mostly unknown, and perfectly at peace with it. And so can you be. Rest now. Let the questions drift down into the deep, and settle, and be still, and let yourself go with them, gently, into sleep.